Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. My name is Xavier Santiago. I am the chair of CB11 and as such, the chair of this committee. This meeting is called to order officially at 6:40 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Angel Mescain, our staff liaison to our committee. And in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, CB11 members, if you have questions about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. To raise your hand through Zoom, click the participants icon and you will find the raise hand function there. If you have technical difficulty, click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. 3, members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. 4, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record when recognized. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address or phone number that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. 5, when a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you may unmute yourself so that you may speak. 6, please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. 7, members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects of the agenda this evening, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. We will now take the attendance by roll call. Committee members, you can unmute yourselves and answer present when your name is called. Angel.
Jose Altamirano.
Present.
Stephanie Arroyo.
Here.
Adem Brija. Jessica Elliott.
Present.
David Giordano.
Present.
John Green.
Here.
Marissa Mack. Nelsa Orama. Xavier Santiago.
Present.
Isaac Scott. Jason Villanueva. Michelle Wilcher-Clement.
Present.
You have quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Angel. Appreciate that. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there are no objections, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Committee members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from our last meeting were distributed to the committee members ahead of time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt the minutes from the meeting. Committee members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand to be recognized. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the last meeting are adopted and will be posted on our website. The minutes for tonight's meeting are going to be taken by Jessica Elliott and myself to revise after the fact. So thank you very much for your patience. Okay, thank you. We will now entertain any announcements from our board members. Please raise your hands if you wish to be recognized to make an announcement. Okay, seeing no announcements from our board members, Nicholas Reyes, do you have an announcement you wish to make?
Hey guys, how are you today? My name is Nicholas Reyes, the district's current state committee member. I just wanted to introduce myself and I'll just drop my contact information in the chat. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Could you give your contact information for the record, please? Just state it out loud.
Well, my email is nicholasreyes.statecommittee@gmail.com. My phone number is 646-538-9792. Yeah, my name is Nicholas Reyes. Feel free to hit me up if you need anything or want to just talk about anything. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. Appreciate that. And now you can drop it in the chat. Okay. All right. Seeing no other, and don't forget to lower your hand. Seeing no other announcements. Okay. Move to the next slide, please. Are there any informational updates from our board members? Seeing no hands raised. And again, for those joining us for the first time here, the executive committee is comprised of our elected leadership, our officers, and the chairs of each of our committees, so that you're aware. So this is where we tend to handle the higher level items or items that were missed in committee due to time constraints. So thank you very much. No informational updates. Next slide. Discussions and presentations. We have an informational presentation regarding the MTA's acquisition of city-owned property for temporary easements to support Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 project under the library, park, and entry to the bridge. We have Joe O'Donnell and the team from the MTA. I'd like to say thank you for your patience in us getting started. And I will now pass the floor over to you, Joe, and the team.
Thank you, Chair Santiago, and to Community Board 11 for having us. Again, my name is Joe O'Donnell. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations for MTA Construction and Development. I'm joined here by several members of our MTA family, both the Second Avenue Subway Project team and our Transit-Oriented Development team, as the Chair mentioned, to talk to you about some below-grade easements that would be needed to pursue, the MTA will need to pursue in order to advance Phase 2 of the Second Avenue Subway Project. Matthew Petrus is here with us from our TOD team, and he's going to be sharing a presentation. Angel, if you could allow him access to share. Again, we're here to speak to you about Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 and some below-grade easement needs. I am joined by Liam Dalton, who is the project executive, PCEO, for the Second Avenue Subway project. Also, Kieran Spillane from P2P, the Second Avenue Subway Phase 2 partnership. He's with our design team, and the aforementioned Matthew Petrus from our transit-oriented development team. So I'm just going to tee things up here and then turn it over to Liam to talk a little bit about the background of Second Avenue Subway Phase 1, so that we're all speaking the same language. Kieran will walk through the need for these easements and what they're intended for. And then Matthew will talk to you a little bit about the process. So why we're here tonight, as the chair mentioned, we're here to speak to you about 3 easements that were needed or will be needed, and were identified as being city-owned property. These are subsurface easements, so they are below ground. Aside from the construction of the project itself, these easements themselves will not have any surface level impacts. In order to acquire these properties, there is a 45-day referral process by which we need to notify the community board, and the community board has an opportunity to consider and weigh in before being referred to City Council. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liam Dalton, the project executive, to talk about the project overview. Liam.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, everyone. So let me kick this off. Give a quick history here. You may have seen this slide before. It highlights all 4 phases of our Second Avenue subway program. So when completed, it will become the new T-line and will run from 125th Street in Harlem down along the east side of Manhattan to Hanover Square, which is adjacent Wall Street. The overall length of this new subway line will be 8.5 miles, and it will include 16 stations. As most of you know, the first phase was put into service on New Year's Day in 2017 and consisted of 3 stations, 96, 86, and 72nd, and then it tied into the existing queue line of 63rd Street. So the phase 1 work was also include some layup tracks between 96 and 105th Street, and that's to accommodate some train storage during the off-peak periods. So phase 2, this current phase that we're going into, will continue from this point at 105th Street and proceed north along 2nd Avenue and then westwards along 125th Street, terminating just past the intersection at Malcolm X Boulevard. So we'll have new stations at 106, 116th, and a deep cavern station at 125th Street. So it's at the 125th Street station where passengers can transfer upstairs to the Lexington Avenue line for the 4, 5, and 6 trains. So for now, the subway extension will be probably better known as the Q line extension. So the benefit of that is passengers getting on the train at 125th Street can enjoy a single seat ride all the way to Coney Island. Let's just move on to the next slide, Matthew. So on the second phase, we are delivering our promise to the Harlem community to build an east side Manhattan subway line to 125th Street. And since the environmental impact statement was released in 2004, much has changed in the Harlem community. We know the population is growing. More Harlem residents than ever are using public transportation in comparison to other city neighborhoods. And the aging population has increased, creating the city's first aging improvement district. So some of the benefits of Second Avenue coming to Harlem, well, we're going to improve the reliability by reducing overcrowding on the Lexington's 4, 5, and 6 lines. And not only do we get a one-seat ride to Coney Island, we'll get Second Avenue riders easier access to Metro North Railroad, access to the Bronx, Westchester, Connecticut, which in itself gives more access to those job markets in those communities. Additionally, those ridership numbers include the reverse commute, so allowing better access to Harlem and the Upper East Side. So once construction starts, we can anticipate over 1,500 workers will be engaged during the construction effort. And some of our contracts may require local hiring provisions. So in addition to our Second Avenue Community Center at 125th Street, we will be taking a lease on some property at 125th Street, which will accommodate up to 200 people. And that will be including our own MTA staff, all our consultants, and much of the design staff from the contracting team. So I think the next slide, we're going to show you a short video, which we pulled together, which will highlight the scope of the construction work. And then afterwards, Kieran will walk us through the city acquisitions.
Phase 2 to Harlem project builds on the success of Phase 1. Extending our rail services offered from 96th Street along Second Avenue, in Harlem at 125th Street Station. Started to improve our methods and technology of Phase 1 to execute it faster and save taxpayer money. One cost-saving approach for Phase 2 is advancing all the utilities under a separate contract before we start the open cut work on 106th Street Station. In Phase 2 to Harlem, we will also increase savings by repurposing existing resources. For example, Tunnel Station 13, constructed in the 1970s, will become an all-new station. A tunnel boring machine, or TBM, will build the new subway tunnels north of the 116th Street Station. It will be launched from the Belmont excavation site located at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and 120th Street. The TBM's pressurized face will initially proceed north before curving west under existing properties to 125th Street. As it advances along its route, the TBM will negotiate a variety of ground conditions, including soils, rock, and mixed-face conditions. The subway's precast concrete segmental tunnel lighting will be installed at the rear of the TBM. The tunnel alignment will pass through the area of the new 125th Street Station cavern located between 3rd Avenue and Park Avenue. The new 125th Street Station cavern will be mined in rock and will traverse under the existing Lexington Avenue station. Connecting tunnels will be constructed between these stations. Tunneling will also extend westward past the 125th Street in order to accommodate layup tracks for train storage and the retrieval of the TBM at this location. Finally, station designs for Phase 2 to Harlem will feature singular systems contract approach, which will minimize interfaces and provide a greater opportunity for innovations within the station envelope. Each station will have above-ground ancillary buildings engineered to minimize underground construction. It will house ventilation, mechanical, electrical, and communications equipment, including spot networks for facility power. This is a move away from Phase 1's substation model. Station designs have been improved to increase rider comfort and will be accessible, consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Communications-based train control, or CBTC, will direct trains along both the Phase 1 and Phase 2 to Harlem routes. As work continues, visit our website to stay up to date with the latest news in the MTA's mission to serve the transit riders of Manhattan.
Okay, I think we had a little issue with the sound there, but we'll get it right the next time. Kieran?
Thank you, Liam. So I'm just going to walk, good evening, everybody. I'm just going to walk everybody through what the city property needs that we've discussed for the project for phase 2. So next slide, Matthew, please. So as I think, we've shown in the video, this is an overall view of the alignment for phase 2, basically coming up from 105th Street, up 2nd Avenue, and then curving west, and then heading west along 125th Street to a point past Malcolm X Boulevard, with 3 new stations, as was mentioned in the video. So when we get into there's a variety of property needs that are needed from various private owners and public agencies. And so we're going to concentrate tonight on the 3 properties that are city owned right now, and we'll go through that. So we can see the 3 properties, one for the RFK Bridge approach from currently administered by Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority. We have PS 96, which is obviously a Department of Education facility. And then we have the New York Public Library on 125th Street, which is just east of 3rd Avenue. And so we'll go through each one of those properties subsequently. We'll focus right now on the Public School 96. And what we have here is it's a temporary easement for the construction of one of our ancillary buildings. And our ancillary buildings, just for general information, are where we have basically support facilities to operate both the stations and the tunnel segments in between stations. And those ancillary buildings will house fans, electrical equipment, and other mechanical equipment, which actually make the subway function. So right now it's owned by the City of New York. It's Public School 96, as we mentioned. And really what we're going to be doing is we're asking for a temporary easement underneath the basement of the building, which we can basically put some support of excavation so that when we build our building, the excavation is stable and safe, as well as the surrounding buildings, most importantly, the school here is supported and won't experience any undue impacts from our construction. Next slide, Matthew. There you go. So here's a plan view on the left side of the screen. So basically north would be to the right of the screen. You can see 120th Street and 2nd Avenue. And the blue shaded area is the area of the temporary easement. And that basically goes underneath the basement of the building. And you can see on the right-hand side is a section, basically a vertical section looking northward. You can see 2nd Avenue to the right. You can see our tunnel underneath 2nd Avenue on the right side. And then we show our proposed ancillary 2 building, what we're calling ancillary 2 building. And you can see PS 96 on the left side. And that blue shaded area is basically, like I said, it goes from the basement level down about 60 feet. And really that is, once again, that's so that we can excavate the basement of the proposed ancillary building, connect to our tunnel, and we can do that in a safe and efficient manner such that the excavation proceeds smoothly and that Public School 96 doesn't experience any interruptions to their uses. Obviously the students, the faculty, etc. Everything goes along safely and smoothly. So that's what we're requesting here. We want to move to the next slide. So the RFK Bridge approach, it's a little bit complicated in terms of, it's Tunnel Bridge and Tunnel Authority, but it's a city-owned property. And you can see at the center of the screen, once again, north is to the top of the screen here. You can see 2nd Avenue going straight up to Page and 125th Street going left to right at the top of the screen there. And you can see our yellow tunnel alignment, approximate center of the tunnel alignment. You can see a very small blue triangle at the center of the screen, and that's what we're going to be looking for. And once again, this is a subsurface easement. It's a combination of permanent and temporary, and That is really for just so we can excavate out the tunnel structure, which is basically between the two stations. And we'll go to the next slide and describe it a little bit more. So you can see in the plan view on the left side, once again, north is to the right, 2nd Avenue goes left to right, 125th Street is at the right edge of that plan view, going from bottom to top. And you can see that same blue triangle. And really what it is a very small little wedge of city-owned property, which provides access to the RFK Bridge going towards Queens and the Bronx. And so on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a section view, once again, looking north towards the Bronx, and 2nd Avenue would be on the left side of that section view. You see our two small circles. Those would be the two tunnels. They will be constructed by tunnel boring machine. And so it'll be pretty smooth and seamless below the street during construction. And what you'll see on the right side is that basically wedge of triangle in plan view. We're showing it as a rectangle in section view. And you'll see adjacent to the right-hand circular tunnel, there's a small, darker cross-hatched area. That would be the permanent proposed easement for the tunnel. And really what that does is provides a buffer around the tunnel structure itself. And that gives the MTA a certain amount of rights so that nobody in the future can come in and get too close to the tunnel. And then what we see in the lighter blue is the temporary easement. And really what that does is it allows for the contractor, before they build the tunnel, if they want to go ahead and improve the ground conditions before the tunnel boring machine gets there. So they may want to stiffen the ground, improve some of the qualities of the ground before the TBM gets there, the tunnel boring machine. And so that's really what it is. And so the proposed easement goes from the ground surface down a pretty considerable amount. So basically it's about 120 feet below surface, and that easement goes for. And like I said, that is strictly for construction means and methods. So we'll go to the third property, and this is the New York Public Library on 125th Street, just east of 3rd Avenue. And here we have temporary and permanent easement construction. So same things, you see the same yellow line that we showed previously, and you can see the public library in the blue rectangle in the center of the street. So it's basically midway between 3rd Avenue and 2nd Avenue. And so in this case, we have a temporary and permanent easement. We'll go to the next screen and we can elaborate on that a little bit more. So you see here on the left side, once again, is a plan view. You'll see north in this case is down to the page. So 125th Street at the bottom of the screen, going from basically east on the left side, west on the right side. And you'll see that little cross-hatched area, the darker area, which is basically triangular in shape. That would be the permanent easement. And then on the section view on the right-hand side, you can see that cross-hatched area, which is adjacent to the tunnels. Once again, the permanent easement is to create a buffer around the permanent tunnels such that nobody can come too close to our tunnels. And then the lighter blue rectangle area, once again, goes basically from a basement level of the public library and goes down about 120 feet around that tunnel. And really that temporary easement in this area is to improve the ground before the tunnel boring machine gets there, before that one tunnel, or basically while construction is going. And really the ground improvement is there to make sure that the library building structure itself doesn't experience any undue impacts or settlements or any detrimental effects due to the tunneling. So once again, it's an allowance for our contractor to go in there and do preemptive measures, make sure that the building doesn't settle while the tunneling goes on. So here's a summary, and this will obviously be shared with you, but it's the 3 city-owned properties. And you can see here, it gives you the dimensions of the easements that are being requested, both temporary and permanent, depending on the site. And you can see the approximate dimensions for each easement that's being requested.
Great. So I'll be brief. I just want to walk through the timeline and next steps. So we've identified which parcels that we need right now, and Kieran will kind of walk through why we need those parcels. And so today, this is a 45-day referral to Community Board 11. After those 45 days, the Community Board can issue a recommendation to the City Council or any other type of document that it chooses, but it's a 45-day referral just for informational purposes. After those 45 days, the acquisition request goes to City Council for a vote. And after those 45 days, that would allow the MTA to acquire the property, acquire the easements from the city. And the 45-day period would be around July 2nd for the Community Board. So I'm sure there's questions, but we just wanted to get a couple of them out of the way. The first is, are there any impacts to the operating hours at PS 96, a library, in acquiring these? I'm sorry, yeah, are they going to be open? Yes, so both PS 96 and library will remain open during and following construction. There's currently work going on at the library, and so this work won't impact whether or not the library is open. Like Kieran said, these are all below grade. And then the same is true during construction. And that's kind of the reason why a lot of the ground improvement will be taking place, is that so the operations and the foundations of these buildings are impacted. With respect to monitoring construction noise and vibration, so DOT has requirements which are actually heightened around schools and libraries. And so MTA, it will be complying with all of these comprehensive requirements, and we'll have 24/7 monitoring. And again, once the tunnel boring machine is launched, construction and noise vibration won't be really noticeable from the street, because it will be underground and kind of drilling beneath our feet. So I'm sure there's more questions. There's contact information here, but I'm available and the team's available to answer any additional questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much. Before we jump in, and I will go to Jessica Elliott first, a few ground rules just to be reminded. No one may speak until granted the floor. 2, CB11 members, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. 3, chat function, again, should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. 4, when a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you. You may unmute yourself so that you may speak. 5, please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. 6, members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the item being discussed, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Committee members asked to hold any motions until the discussion period has ended. All right, Jessica Elliott.
Thank you,
You're
Chair.
Mhm.
And thank you to the MTA for the presentation. I just had a question. If we could go back to the library site plan. It wasn't abundantly obvious for the other 2 site areas that there was impacts to surrounding lots, but this one is pretty obvious that there are lots, for example, to the left of lot 37 that are not city-owned properties. I'm just curious why these easements are required on city-owned property like the public library, and they're not needed or necessary in any of these other privately owned parcels. Thank you.
So if you want, I can take a stab at that first. Yes, there are easements, permanent and temporary, required wherever the tunnel alignment goes out from underneath the DOT-owned right-of-way, basically the public right-of-way where the MTA has rights to operate. So those rights, those permanent and temporary easements are being acquired for those properties.
Yeah, Jessica, it's just a different process. I mean, we went through that with the EDPL hearing that we had back earlier this year for the public parcels. So the privately owned parcels, those were largely the temporary easements. There were some permanent acquisitions in there, but all those temporary easements were included in that discussion at that time. This is just a separate process.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that question, Jessica. Let's see, do we have any more board members who have questions before I go to the public? Okay. Michelle, your question?
Hi, yes, thank you for your presentation. I noticed that when you were talking about the school being near the school and the library, and that there are more stringent rules and regulations, what hours of operation would it be during the school time? That the hours of operation for the building of this item?
So, yeah, I mean, again, we don't have a contractor on board yet, Michelle, to establish, work practices where they're going to largely be dictated by DOT. We anticipate working, typical first, second, and third shifts, depending on, how the contractor lays out the job around schools specifically. And somewhat seemingly ironically, they like to confine the work hours or the noisier, impactful work from 9 to 2, largely trying to keep folks, the construction efforts out of the way of busing operations and sort of entry and dismissal for the schools because it's high traffic times. But again, it'll be dictated by DOT, and when we have a better idea of means and methods from the contractor once we have them on board.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to find out with the high traffic times of entering and dismissal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering that, Joe. There are no other board member questions. I will go to Nicholas Reyes. Nicholas, you may ask your question.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask about the local hiring position provision. You said it may be included. When will we know if it's going to be included? And my second question is, how did you guys come up with like the locations for the easement? Like, how did you figure that out? Thank you.
Joe?
So with regard to the local hiring provision, that we're in a unique position right now where we actually have had the restraints taken off of us. Prior to 2020 and the Biden administration's Build It Back Better initiative, we were not allowed to geographically restrict our contractors' hiring practices. So we've gone through great pains to come out to the communities in which we're delivering projects and have what we call job information events, where we can make meaningful connections between the labor workforce as well as civil service opportunities with the MTA and some of our sister agencies. But again, fast forward to 2020, and now with the Build It Back Better initiative actually incentivizing local hiring, we do have the ability to encourage, not necessarily require, but encourage our contractors to hire locally from the communities within which we're delivering these projects. So we're working on that project labor agreement right now. We don't know that it'll be finalized by contract 1, which we hope to get out by the end of this year, but subsequent contracts would we would seek to have that local hiring provision in those contracts 2, 3, and 4 that we envision encompassing the delivery of this project. So that's why we say, hope to, because we don't think we'll have it, ironed out by the delivery of contract 1.
All right, Joe, if you want me to go through the
I also had another
why
question.
the easements were selected.
Yeah, but part 2 of the
that.
question, Nicholas, was how we arrived at the locations of the easements. So if you want to jump in for that, Karen.
Thanks. So Matthew, if you can go to slide 9, which I think is the previous one there, you could see is, so essentially we've selected where the tunnels will go to carry the 2nd Avenue subway train, both the Q and ultimately T lines, based on what infrastructure is out there and where the stations will be located. So you can see on the screen, basically we go up 2nd Avenue, as we mentioned. There's 2 sections of tunnels that were constructed in the 70s that we're going to reuse and put into active service, basically fulfilling what they were constructed for back in the 70s. And then we, as part of the program for 2nd Avenue, we're going to make a turn to the left and go along 125th Street and provide that interconnectivity between the 4, 5, and 6 lines, as Liam mentioned, as well as Metro North up to the northern suburbs. So in order for us to do that, we need to basically curve the tunnels out that will go under various private properties and city-owned properties as we make that turn. So really, those properties were identified from where the tunnel will fall, such that we can get that suitable speed, to traverse, for the train to traverse those tunnels. And really, that's why we've come to you today about those 3 properties that are city-owned.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Nicholas, I hope that answers your question. Okay. All right, thank you very much. And if I'm understanding correct, because I see no more hands, and Nick, if you could just lower your hand, please. I
One more question, brother. Where can I find the
Right.
environmental impact report from 2004? My bad, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
The-
go ahead.
Yeah.
Your question, please. So clearly you got to wait to be recognized, Nick.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
I know it's your first time here. Don't worry. We're going to walk you through it, but you wait to be recognized, then I recognize, and then it just how we just create the structure for a very polite meeting. So now, yes, great. Okay, you're recognized. One more question, Nick.
Where can I find the environmental report that you said that was published in 2004? I believe that's what you said.
The initial report was published in 2004, and then there was a supplemental review in 2018. You can find that on the MTA website at the project page, or I took your contact information down. I can fire off the link directly tomorrow, later, so that you don't have to go searching for it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, I could also add, you can find it online. You just Google it and it's there.
But thank you for asking that question, Nicholas. Yes, that's something we've asked constantly, and I really appreciate how the MTA has been leaning into that particular ask. So thank you. And if no more questions, if I'm understanding correct, Joe, as we go back to our main screen, looking basically for a no objection position, just like we did previously, but we have a 45-day review period, which would be July 2nd, correct? Is that correct, Matthew?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Matthew,
it would
if
be,
you wanna confirm.
yeah, it would be around July 2nd. I believe that is either a Friday or Saturday. So there's a little bit of flexibility. So around that date.
Okay, that'd be helpful because we typically try to give the committee and the board that time to digest everything. So I would, yeah, so we can easily entertain the city executive next month. Okay, so we will take a position which, historically, we supported or took a no objection because we did want to get things going, and then that'll trigger the city council. If there's anything urgent that comes up, please let us know ASAP.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
No, thank you for being us, and apologies for having a late start. We value your time. Okay, we can get the main screen on. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the renewal application for full liquor license number 1295898 for a restaurant located at 2262 First Avenue and near 116th Street, the Sapoara LLC. That is one of our members, Giselle Malave. Angel, could you confirm whether or not all the materials were delivered? I believe you said they were in the email.
Yes, all materials were submitted.
All right. Do any board members have any questions about this renewal application? Please raise your hands. Yes, Jason?
Mayor motion, Chair.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Could you say that again? You're muted, Jason. Okay, Michelle, your hand.
Hi, I don't have a question. I would like to second the motion that he had made a motion to bundle and I want to second that motion.
Okay, I hadn't clearly heard that, but I just want to address each item individually. So would you like to make a motion on this matter for Sapoara?
I would like to make a motion on the Sapoara restaurant renewal application.
Is there a second? Stephanie?
Second.
Oh,
Take Jason. You can take Jason.
yeah. Jason, you were second, and just make sure to raise your hand. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Aye.
Xavier,
Aye.
Isaac, Jason, Michelle.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next agenda item is the Mount Sinai Green Market, the Wednesday, number 708-623 Farmers Market. And that is Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 through November 22nd, 2023, set up at 6 a.m., break it down at 6 p.m., located in Madison Avenue between East 98th Street and East 99th Street. The street closure, sidewalk and curb lane closure. Applicant is Kathy Chambers. Sponsor is Council of Environment, doing business as Grow NYC. And I believe we do have Kathy Chambers here. Kathy, would you like to speak on this application?
Good evening. I hope everybody is doing well. It's the same as it's been for the last 10 years. It's going to be on Madison Avenue between 98th and 99th Street, wraps on around the corner onto 99th Street, outside the Mount Sinai Medical Building. And there's no changes.
Okay. Angel, could you remind me, was this just didn't get onto the agenda in time for licenses and permits?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Just confirming that. Okay, if there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the application. Jessica, you're recognized.
Motion to approve the application.
Is there a second? Jose, you're recognized.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Is that for both or just the Sinai one?
They are both, Jessica, they're both related to the same. Okay, they're both. Yes, I'd like to include both of those if that would be Jessica.
Yep. I
So
can
that would-
remake the motion for approval for both Mount Sinai Green Market Wednesday, number 708-623, and PS 57 Farm Stand Wednesday, number 708-606. Motion to
Yes,
approve.
please. Yes, thank you. Second, Jose, I'll go back to you. Jose?
Yeah, second both.
Okay, please call the roll. Thank you for that catch. Appreciate it.
Jose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Aye.
Xavier,
Aye.
Isaac, Jason,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you
Thank-
very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the review of our draft agenda for upcoming full board meeting. And before we jump into that, I took a review of last year's full board meetings just to see how things were going, where we're trending. And before we jump into that agenda, just a quick note, we're going to take a more direct turn to a business-centric focus that we observed last year. We'll cover this during old business, but again, encouraging our members of the public to attend committee meetings and to weigh in there as they've classically done. And also what we have observed too is at the committee level, just showing grace and patience because the digital space is not as forgiving when there are technical difficulties versus having someone in the room sitting 10 feet, 6 feet from you, and they're raising their hand and they get to actually opine. So I just, we'll jump into that a little bit more. But again, as we go through the agenda, looking at creating a more business-centric approach for this month and going forward. So Angel, would you kindly pull up the agenda please, for full board?
Give me 1 second. It should be up now.
Okay, great. So fairly standard as we've done in previous months, normal review, public session. Then with our business session, we have a housing agenda item. Let's go down. With a motion by Jason Wu to write a letter to NYC Rent Guidelines Board demanding a rent freeze for rent stabilized apartments in NYC, and also call upon our elected officials to join us in demanding a rent freeze. The motion was seconded by Candy Vivas Vasquez and passed unanimously. If you'll note, we also received a letter from the BP's office where multiple council members have weighed in on having public hearings with this matter. We're waiting to see how that will be addressed. So again, that's our next item. And then our next item are licenses and permits. So we have numbers 1, 2, and 3. You have one denial from I's Restaurant Corp. Number 2 is approve the application of Reyes Beer Inc. to renew a full liquor license. Number 1, quadruple 318. Number 3 is a deny for the application Dos Amigos Restaurant Group LLC doing business as La Chula to renew a full liquor license. Number 1, 2, 99938. 4 is to approve the application of Perch Bar LLC doing business as Perch Bar to renew full liquor license number 1319226. And we have a slew of block parties this year. It's always this time of year, May and June, which we're a bit heavy. 5 is Washington House's annual Juneteenth Father's Day celebration. I expect as many people to show up. We have number 705567 block party that'll be on June 18th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. East 99th Street's 3rd to 2nd Avenue. It's a full street closure, and Claudia Perez is the applicant, sponsors Washington residents at Washington House's resident council. Yes, Stephanie, you have a question?
I'm looking at the screen and it says committee recommends this application to be denied.
Yep. So
Was it
do we
still
have an
happening?
answer? I don't know. We have to find out from Claudia and what happened. So I was told that it had been approved, but Angel, would you give us a little bit of clarity here?
I don't have the background. I don't attend the licenses meetings.
Dan just texted me, he had a bit of an emergency, so we'll get clarity on that and we'll reach out to Claudia. Thank you. Juneteenth is number 6, is a block party number 704438. Street event, applicant is Pilar Jesus, is June 17th, 10 a.m. breakdown, 7 p.m. Full street closure, and the committee recommended the application be approved. 7 is community block party summer kickoff number 708302. June 24th, and it'll be 9 a.m. breakdown, 5 p.m. East 110th Street between Park Avenue and Madison Avenue. Its applicant is Justin Caceres, and its Family Enrichment Center Union Settlement sponsor, and the committee recommends that this application be approved. Number 8 is James Weldon Johnson House's Love and Unity Day, number 640 block party, July 29th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it's Lexington Avenue between East 115th Street and East 112th. It was for a full street closure, applicant Kenneth Cox, and sponsors 3N1 Multi-Services LLC. The committee recommends this application be approved. Number 9 is Jungle Gym 2023, number 704935 street event. And that is July 28th, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Location is East 106th Street between Lexington Avenue and 3rd Avenue in the street closures. It's a full street closure. Its applicants Mac Levine, Concrete Safaris, recommended to be approved by the committee. Okay. And then the next one is Jungle Gym 2023 704936 street event. And that's August 18th, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That is at East 116th Street between Lexington and 3rd Avenue, full street closure. Same applicant, Mac Levine and Concrete Safaris, and the committee recommends this application be approved. 11 is Great Day in Harlem Kids Party, number 698307, block party, August 12th, 12 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. East 126th Street, 5th Avenue, Madison Avenue, full street closure. Applicant is Megan Moore and is 2041 5th HDFC co-op residents on the block. Committee recommended the application be approved. And then we have Next Family Day, number 694978, block party, August 26th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. East 99th Street between Lexington Avenue and Park Avenue, full street closure. Anique Webster, Lexington Houses Resident Council. Committee recommends that this application be approved. And number 13 is 129 Block Association. Number 701783, block party, August 26th, 12 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. East 129th Street between Madison Avenue and Park Avenue. It's a full street closure. Antoinette Respas and 129th Block Association sponsor, and the committee recommended it be approved. I will find out from Ademed why the Washington Houses was not approved in just a moment.
Xavier, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I wanted to
Yeah.
add something. I had a chance to look at the Airtable where you were reading off the other items. And Washington Houses did not submit any paperwork. Typically, when street activity permits are denied by committee, it's usually for a lack of paperwork. So there's nothing in the Airtable. So it may have been that. We'll confirm with the DEM, but it seems to be the case.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Members of the public committee, we have an automatic rejection process if we don't receive the necessary paperwork, but thank you very much for clarity on that, Angel. Environment, Open Space and Parks, Human Services, Youth and Education, no action items. Land Use Landmarks and Planning had a motion to recommend approval of the land use application C230286 ppm and C230285 pqm 244 East 106th Street with the Share NYC project, moved by Jessica Morris, seconded by Candy Vivas Vasquez, and approved unanimously. And then number 2, a motion to recommend approval of BSA application Cal 897-85-BZ Mount Sinai Klingenstein Clinical Center with the condition that Mount Sinai continue its good faith effort to be a committed neighbor. Was this the, sorry, I'm going to pause for just a second. I know we were trying to revise that. Did you receive the Jessica Elliott's revision that was more in accordance with the meeting record and the motion made on the floor?
I received the email, but that's not reflected here because that was being left for this conversation.
Okay. So what happened, and my understanding, and Jason Villanueva and Jessica Elliott could opine a little bit more. There was an amendment made to the original motion to support. If you could scroll down just a slight bit for me, Angel. Right there, it's fine. Thank you. And that this particular motion was amended, and what was sent over was a little bit more in depth and fuller than what was presented on the floor. And I'm going to turn over to Jessica Elliott to offer us a little bit of clarity, since she sits on that committee and has been working with this particular motion. So Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I rewatched the recording, and the only words that were mentioned in the making of the motion were, basically making sure that Mount Sinai remains to be a good partner to the neighborhood, which I think we all agree that they already are. So I had suggested via email that we revise this specifically. I think where it starts to say specifically through their consideration for public realm improvement and increased open space along access along the and across the Madison Avenue corridor for the extent of its institutional reach. ... I don't think any of that was mentioned in the meeting. And I just think that this is a bit too long and, more advanced than what was agreed upon in the meeting. So I suggest that we revise it to, with the condition that Mount Sinai continue its good faith effort to be a committed neighbor for health-based advocacy in East Harlem by way of ongoing engagement and activation through its community advisory board and other points of regular community outreach, et cetera, in support of improved health, wellness, and economic vitality for those served in service and in proximity to their facilities. So essentially all of the same words, just condensed down to something that's more manageable and what was actually discussed in the meeting.
Okay, great. And I think did you email that over, correct?
I did.
Okay, great. If we could copy and do a strike through and replace, so that way it's reflected for the record. Thank you, Angel, and take your time. That is what we will present to the full body, because that's what was reflected and voted on by the committee.
I'll fix it later.
Thank you very much, Angel. With the other, and if we scroll down, we have no public safety transportation committee meeting, action items, and no economic development. Well, sorry, excuse me. Economic Development Culture had a motion to approve funding request in the amount of $500 on behalf of the Economic Development and Culture Committee to support the Open Streets program at 101st Street and 115th Street. It was moved by Stephanie Arroyo and seconded by Eugene Rodriguez and passed unanimously. John, you had a question regarding the agenda?
Yes, sir. On action item 12, I'm a resident of Lexington Houses, so should I consider myself present, not voting on that particular action item?
You may choose to do so, and that's probably the safer way to go.
Okay.
Do you sit on the tenant association currently?
No, I used to. I did years ago, but not anymore. No.
Okay. Just you may opt to, since the community, your local community would stand to benefit, is the safe thing to do. In the meantime, we can check with COIB, Conflicts of Interest Board, and anyone can call up to get inquiry and get anonymous advice from the attorneys there. But the safer thing would just be present, not voting. So
Okay.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So with that, that covers our action items. Now, what I will do, once we get clarity on the Washington houses and whether or not with the deliverables, that's the only outstanding item. Otherwise, that may potentially move to new business as we have observed in the past. However, I will look to bundle each individual committee will be voted on with their action items, and then licenses and permits, the committee's recommendation will all be bundled as we have done in the past. So, Stephanie, you had your hand raised. Did you have a question? I saw you lower it.
I did. So I was under the, and maybe this is going to come up later, and if so, my apologies, but I was under the impression that Carrie was going to request more money or for the open streets, or maybe we could bring up the fact that my committee would like to support with extra funds. But I was wondering if that was going to come up later, maybe, I don't know.
It was not on the agenda for this time. It was, and again, if Marissa, who texted us, said she was not going to be here this evening, each committee for community engagement events was allocated 500. So Angel, I'll let you opine on this, please.
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that up. On the day of the Economic Development Committee, I reached out to two chairs. In addition to ECHO, with regards to this request from Uptown Grand Central to support their open streets programming, one being Stephanie with the budget committee and the other being a Dem with the licenses committee, to ask if they would be open to the idea of helping support this request with the allocations from their respective committees, so that Uptown for this ask would be getting the 1,500 once we bundle all three committees. But Dem's not here this evening, but that's what Stephanie's referring to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I know they do need the funds sooner than later. But do you believe this is something that could wait until next month so the committees can actually vote on it?
So the committees don't have to vote on it. Like, some committees choose to, some committees don't. I'd like to suggest that this be considered a full board, and perhaps someone can make, perhaps Stephanie or a Dem could make a friendly amendment to this motion, and include should they so choose, and include the grants from their respective committees.
Okay. Jason, your hand was raised, and then I'll go to Michelle. Jason.
Yeah, Chair, simultaneously, as treasurer, we have a form for these issues, not issues, but just that provides clarity where we, ensure to a lot of this funding, if and when it doesn't affect the operating budget of the organization. So that said, I'd say I don't disagree with any of the sentiments already shared. I would ask those chairs to ensure they fill out that form, so then that way we have the track record on top of the ratification that happens at full board.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that recommendation. So if we could have Stephanie and then a Dem fill out that form in support of, then I would entertain on the day an amendment to that. Before we go forward, we have Michelle.
I thank you for giving me the floor. I wanted to find out the grants that we have. Is there a time that ends and then the grant is added on for the following year? When does that happen? When is the end of this year and the beginning of the following year that we get another grant of $500 per committee?
June 30th is the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, seeing that, like I said, just to reiterate, if Stephanie and we'll reach out to Dem, just get that form filled out and support it. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, just one more question. Should I fill out the form before full board, or are we doing this month or next month? Like, that's when I guess
This month. So fill out the form before full board. If you could get it in tomorrow at some point before the staff are off for the weekend, that'd be great. And then that way we can have that prepared and out with the packets. And you can apprise Marissa as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being supportive of our open streets. We, as a reminder for the public, 101st Street in 2020 was the first open street in northern Manhattan. And many of you may remember Kerry King and myself, Jessica Morris, and others. I think Jess Elliott came out multiple times. I've seen you stay, like, we were literally lugging plants, running around, helping, work and get our kids outdoors so they would have fresh air and not be confined in their spaces. So I want to say thank you to everyone for being supportive of this initiative, and we'll look forward to a successful summer. So with that, executive, we're here. We don't, other than the action items we've taken this evening, which will be amended to go out tomorrow. That concludes our agenda. And David Giordano, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just very quickly, I do want to also add that 101st Street has always been a play street, and I have pictures going back to the 1950s and 60s from Children's Aid when we opened in 1956, and we continue and will continue once we move back in to run the play street and support the open streets as well. So.
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, it's always some of my favorite memories. My kids love it too. So thank you, David. Wonderful. With that, Michelle, is that an old hand?
It is an old hand.
Okay. And we have one before we move on in our agenda. Nicholas, did you have a question? Because I know this is your first meeting that you've attended.
Yeah. This is with you actually. I've been coming to committee board meetings since 2017. So I just wanted to make that correction. So yeah, I just want to say thank you guys. I'm from the 100th Street in Lex. I went to Children's Society my whole life, so I want to say thank you to the board for continuing to support open streets. That's an amazing thing. The kids in my neighborhood, love that. I just wanted to. You said announcements from elected officials. I just wanted to give you guys an update about what the state committee is doing and what we did this past May 11th up in Albany. If I get an opportunity, I know that you said there'll be
Nicholas, yeah, absolutely. We can afford you that at full board. For an announcement, because we do go to our elected officials.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, next Tuesday, make sure you're registered though, okay? It just makes it easier so we can go through the roll. All right?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. Don't forget to lower your hand. Angel, your hand's still up. Okay, and then committee chair.
My hand up.
Huh? Oh, you do?
Yeah,
go ahead, Angel.
No, I was kidding. I was saying that I like my hand up.
Oh, sorry, it broke up on my end. Okay, we're gonna go just on the order what I have here on the screen. We'll go to housing. John Green.
Oh, chair reports. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, basically the thing is this month we we had basically an update on the building for LGBT youth that's planned on 106th Street. They gave an update, and that was basically, and also a motion was made to write a letter for zero rent increases for rent control apartments, and that was basically our meeting for this month.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions from our committee members? Okay, I don't see any hands. License and permits we already addressed. It's mainly going to be action items. We'll go to environment, open space, and parks.
Thank you, Chair. We had a pretty light meeting this month. Some obviously informational updates from our regular attendees like Parks and Randall's Island. We had a presentation from Elsie and Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala's office for the co-naming of Thomas Jefferson Park basketball courts for Mark Kelly Sr. from Hoops by the River. There was a little less information than I think was necessary for that. So I think, and this being, I think my first at least naming process through the Parks Committee, we're going to use the same process as is typical for the community board for this. So Elsie and team are going back to get the paperwork done, get the letters of support, the signatures that are needed, the biographical information, so that all the boxes are checked. We also touched upon the second annual East Harlem Earth Day Conference recap. So just getting input from the committee and those who attended the event on what they experienced, all positive things, and excitement for the upcoming year. So I think the lessons learned are we have now a year to plan for the next event, and we should take every minute of that time so that we're not rushing at the last minute. And then we also talked about parks tours that Malik, our vice chair, has been planning. So we have a draft schedule that is available. We're working with Civitas to partner on a jazz band element as we go to the East River Esplanade. And that's about it. Any
Wonderful.
questions?
Any questions from our board members? Seeing no hands raised. Human Services, Isaac, you're up. We're getting a lot of background from you, Isaac. Try
Okay.
Unplugging and plugging. Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, much better. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. Okay, cool.
Your chair
All right,
report.
forgive me. If the internet's spotty here. So really quickly, I'm gonna be really quickly. We had two presentations, one from Sharon YC, Chris Perillo came, he's been doing this around, as everybody knows. I'm not sure why he came to our committee without the people, the partner organization, because all of the questions that were relevant to our committee, we could not ask because no one was there from the partner org. So I did encourage him to, I know the project's gonna take some time, but I did encourage him to circle back with our committee, with the other organization, because there were some questions folks had for the regarding the supportive services that would be available in the building. The other presentation we had was from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And then from there, we just continued our discussion on the moratorium. I will, just bullet point some of the additions that were included into the draft thus far, and just encourage people to weigh in with us on this last month before we go on break. So that's my report for now.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Appreciate that. Okay. Next, any questions? Okay, not seeing any. And let me go back. All right, next, hold on a second. All right, next we have our youth and education, David.
Hi, so we had the one presentation on the housing for the funny housing development, which went well. They presented to us 2 years ago as well, so we were happy to see this project move forward. Then we had probably too long of a discussion again on graphics and whether we support or not support. And pretty much 2/3 of the committee want to support it and 1/3 doesn't. And that's where we are. And I think while there are other committee members on here who attended the meeting who do support the project, it really runs into a sticky thing of, when a committee supports something and 2/3 of the committee support it, and then they're at the full board, and I did listen to the full board and the conversations back and forth. I really don't understand why we're not supporting this program at this point. I mean, again, a lot of different things went on, but I tell you, it really raised the question about processing the board and people's understanding. One member also said they reached out to some of the other, or tried to reach out to some of the other board members of graphics. And I guess for me, this raises one question. Are they reaching out as representatives of the board, or are they reaching out as separate individuals? Because board members who are reaching out as individuals or representing the board do need the sanction of the board chair, if that's not my correction, my knowledge. And it's not even that as a committee chair, I can give somebody to represent the board and speaking to other people about certain things. So I think we need clarification on that, so that board members make sure that they do not represent. And, I'm feeling a little disappointed that pretty much, while the majority support, and yes, again, in following Robert's Rules of Order, that this motion did not support in full board. And I'm only sorry I wasn't there that evening. And that was only because of the change in venue for that night, from the previous night. Isaac, I don't know if you want to say anything else. I just feel a little stuck with this. And, you know, where do we go? Because we spent more time on this particular subject for somebody that's from our community, still lives in the community, may not be the orthodox that some of us think they should be. And yet we support some other crazy things in this neighborhood.
So, David, thank you. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk.
So let me just say this, Xavier, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. So my thing was, we were purposely not going to take a vote that night because I think we needed to discuss it and not vote on a motion. Because people did try to throw votes in the previous meeting and also this one on a motion. And emotion, not a motion. And we are going to vote on it as part of our first business. I guess I wanted to ask this body's opinion. I don't need everybody to get on and say, well, first this and first that and second this and third that. It's almost like we should go and have a vote because we should have already done our due diligence. And the fact that our chair and a member of this committee went in person, and this was raised in the meeting, and Claudia Perez, who knows this individual and graphics for 20 years, that's not good enough, then we really need to check ourselves as a board, because nobody can be at everything. And we have to rely on those that sit at a table, that they're bringing back information when those of us may have neglected to sit at that table. My piece.
Thank you, David. I just, so to answer your first question, if a board member is going and acting as a representative of the board, depending on the issue, they should check with the board chair prior to that. If they are following up on committee responsibilities, saying wanting to be in touch with the presenter just to get clarity because they missed something, keeping the committee chair and the board chair and the vice chair of the board apprised of that. So that way we're not caught flat-footed and we're aware of what the outreach is. But again, as individual members, for example, if you were giving testimony on behalf of the board on a position we have taken, keeping the chair and both the committee and the board informed of that is one thing. But if you're going to be taking a position just as on your own person, and it's not a position of the board, you cannot represent that you are a board member representing the board on a position. So, and again, when reaching out, it's common courtesy, but in this case, it would be helpful to say, hey, I missed that meeting. And I'm going to get to your hand raised in just a moment, John. I missed that meeting. Hey, David, I'm going to reach out to him. Okay, fine. How are you going to do it? Email. Send an email. Make sure you keep the chair and vice chair informed. Keep my chair and vice chair of the committee informed. So that way we understand what's going on and we can be there to be supportive or to help make sure things go smoothly. So that's just common best business practice. So yes, you are correct.
So Xavier, I think we should make that point of clarification at full board, not pointing out anybody as individuals, not even addressing it as in this committee, but that clarifying us as representatives of the board and the committee and going out to other entities and saying we are a member of the board, that must be sanctioned by the board chair.
Correct. And that is something that we're going to address in the refresher on May 31st as well for our current members. So absolutely, we're going to address all these, everything down to a granular level. So I'm going to go to John, your question real quick, and we'll keep things running along.
Well, Xavier, it's not a question. I just want to concur with what David said. And I also want to compliment on the comments at that meeting of Isaac Scott, Claudia Perez, and Russell Schuler. They basically got it right. And it says, we're holding all this up over semantics, over 2 words. And I think it's friggin' ridiculous. That's all I really have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Noted. Thank you, John. Okay, with that.
And for those that don't know, the words is doctor and target. I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there.
Okay. All right, David. I appreciate you and your support of trying to make a lot of course correction and the entire committee's and everyone's advocacy. And it's our patience with one another that will be our success. So we will address that at full board as a reminder. We'll find the appropriate place to raise that. I'm going to move us along to our land use, landmarks, and planning chair report, Jason Villanueva.
Yeah, Jay, you pretty much covered what I was gonna discuss over the action items. The only item I would tell everyone to look out for is the zoning text amendment that's out now. It's going through its process of its review for any feedback or comments. So I would ask that the chairs look at that, and if they see anything that sticks out necessarily under their purview, they have a discussion at committee.
Thank you, Jason. That was addressed actually at Borough Board this morning. I would encourage all of you to familiarize yourself with it for next month. So that way, if there are any questions, Jason, Nilsa, the entire team of land use, landmarks, and planning, as well as George James, can help answer any questions in advance. Thank you. Public safety and transportation. Jose? Jose? Okay, he may have stepped away. We'll come back to Jose in a moment. Going to economic development and culture. We don't have Marissa Mack. Angel, is there anything you'd like to address from that meeting?
My screen was not cooperating. Thinking if I'm going. No, nothing particularly stands out. Just they had the one motion for the $500. That was it.
Okay. All right, Jose.
I'm back.
Okay, your committee chair report, and then we'll move into new business and old business.
You can feel free to let Michelle.
Michelle?
No, I'm just kidding. she's gonna text me right now. We had a presentation with DOT regarding 128th and 3rd Avenue. There's some changes they wanted to make there. I have significant concerns about the traffic that happens there in the morning, and they claim that the changes they're going to make are not going to affect it. Basically, they're going to remove the pedestrian bridge, which some people use, but most don't. They want to extend the sidewalks on the southwest and southeast corner, basically making that space smaller, taking away the area for the bus to actually stop. So the bus would stop. And when the bus stops, it would take away a lane of traffic, which it would only leave 2 lanes of traffic. Anyway, it would cause massive mayhem there. We pointed out to DOT and that, our community board looks at things a little differently, not just from a pedestrian point of view, considering our high asthma rates and everything else. We got some little slick remarks, but we put them in their place rather quickly. It was concerning what they're trying to do. I understand that there's a certain agenda the city wants to push, but I think it's our responsibility to make sure that what's done there is done for the betterment of our neighborhood, not just for a particular agenda. There is a school there, for any of you that are not aware, on the 128th Street. The school street goes straight into 128th. They would make a curve. I wish we had a picture so I can show you guys. Angel, where's Khalid on?
No, the presentation is on the website. I can pull it up while you're talking.
Perfect. So while I'm rambling, you can pull it up just for a quick second. I think it's important. I think this is a huge intersection. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this. We'll probably pull it up at full board as well. This is still in the design phase. This is going to be a design phase for another year or 2, they said, before this kind of construction takes place. But, I said I thought that they would make some more interesting designs and make 127th, 3rd Avenue from 127th to 128 a two-way street, so people can use 127th Street, which is mostly unused. That would definitely alleviate a lot of the traffic that's happening. But we can't ignore just how much traffic this goes through. Still, and obviously this affects our community.
Mhm.
So this is kind of the plan of what they're trying to do here. Well, you went too far. Go one more back. There you go. So you see 128th Street. Right now it goes straight through. They would extend that sidewalk, narrow all of that down into 2 lanes. And they would extend the sidewalk on the other side as well, making the cross street even smaller. But, you know, I was telling them that we're obviously going to be very vocal about this because our concerns are justified. Having traffic and having these vehicles just sit there for significantly longer times than they should will definitely affect the people living in our neighborhood. And besides that, we spoke about Michelle, what was the title of our safety conference? I forget the exact title.
We had a few titles. One of them was just the first annual safety awareness facts conference.
Yeah, so this is something we've been trying to work on for a while, and I'm happy that Michelle is my vice chair and she's helping me significantly with this. We're going to see if we also involve Economic and Development, where's MAC, and have this discussion that we've been meaning to have. And we're going to work on this through the summer to see if we can get this going for, I believe we're aiming for beginning of October.
Fantastic, Jose. I look forward to that kicking off. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, that concludes our discussions and presentations. I'm going to move into our new business. Do we have any new business? Nope. Seeing no hands. Old business, continuing committee meeting efficiency document. If you could just pull that up for us, Angel. Yes, Stephanie. While he
Sorry,
pulls.
so it's not new business per se, but I just wanted to remind everyone that City Council has been going through their executive budget hearings, which basically they're reviewing the last document that the mayor provided, stating what he will be doing with our budget for fiscal year 2024. And so those meetings are available on the City Council website. You guys can watch it. Next week, they will be concluding. I believe next week is police and Department of Corrections, but they conclude Wednesday on the 24th, which is when the public can make comments. I urge you all as constituents of the city to definitely look into that and take advantage of the situation and do provide some testimony regarding any of the budget cuts that you heard that you think should not be cut. You should speak to your chairs and to your vice chairs of each of your committee. Well, I'm speaking to the chairs, I'm sorry. So chairs, you should speak with your committee to see if there are any responses that you want to make as a committee and as a board. And I suggest you also bring that to Angel and to Xavier. But I just wanted to make a mention of that, and that is all.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for staying on top of that, both at the state and city level. Appreciate you. Going to move into old business meeting efficiency notes, again, trying to get us in a more efficient state from the committees. We've had some additions put in here, and again, how do we create more efficient meetings, and imagining us being back in the physical space. One of the things that was observed that I've Jessica, Ellie, and I, and Angel and others have conferred, it's, you know, it's very difficult in the digital space when euthanize people on the floor, and they hear the yes, and then they start talking rather than waiting. So there are ways we can say, hold on, let me reiterate, like what I did this evening, which is right before we went into this discussion, reiterating the rules. That helps just trigger people's memory, and especially anyone who's joined late. And that allows us to show an opportunity of grace. And again, if you have to interrupt someone and say, you know, you may need to talk over them as chairs and say, excuse me, just like we had with the contentious issue with Lighthouse, and the lady who attended had to talk over and be reminded of the rules. Showing that amount of grace gets a lot of purchase within the community, and also reminds them, because they may have missed the particular introductions and how we conduct our meetings. So it's important that we show that that patience when we engage back and forth. And also too, when we have issues with technology, like the screen froze for a second with Angel, or a headset's not working, we have to unplug it, or there's a feedback loop, what we've had happen. And so again, that allows us, but again, our work at committee and efficiency is that the public is most engaged at the committee level. So if you can scroll down just a little bit, Angel, we're doing better at this at the committee level, but again, keeping the agenda items concise, keeping things on task, germane, succinct, that, you know, we're working on that. Part of Robert's Rules of Order, and something I'd like to see this committee roll out at each individual committee, is looking out for example, multiple questions, or what they call, you know, kind of like scattershot questions, where they're 5, 6, 7. Entertain one, maybe two from that individual. Cycle through the list of people before you search, because in parliamentary procedure, you then cycle back to the top if there's still additional questions. So that's something I would recommend you do as best practice, and something we'll be observing going forward when it comes to full board. John, you had a question, sir.
Actually, a comment. Actually, I took a page from the city council where they sometimes have, when they have questions at hearings, they say you have 2 minutes to ask questions. But I don't do that. But I do say this: if you have a question, please keep it brief and keep it on topic. Don't go into a tangent, and don't make.
I almost did.
Yep. You're unmuted.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No, it's quite all right. No, but that's a good recommendation. And again, if someone you feel like is not landing their jet, you chime in and say your question, or could you summarize, is a better way to keep things moving. That affords more space for other committee members and the members of the public to engage at the committee level. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, so the rest of it, and feel free, if there are ideas you have, put them in as a recommendation, as a comment. If you can scroll down to the full board. And as a dry run, team, you did a really good job just now as a dry run of your chair reports. Thank you very much. Again, we're going to get back to what we were doing an excellent job last year, which is keeping a business focus, storytelling, as Jess put in here. At the 3-minute mark, what I'm going to do this coming full board and going forward is I will chime in and stop, so we can keep things moving along. You did a great dry run, so I'm sure we won't have a problem. And then we will refer to the minutes. I want to take a moment because of Borough Board, and we're going to invite Tommy Vest, who's the Chief Legal Counsel. Open meetings laws has been amended through the budget process, and we will be afforded, and she'll be able to explain in more detail. We're going to hopefully have her come to executive committee, that if you have a physical disability, for example, that's something that limits you from actually being physically in attendance. When we do go back to being in person, that would be something that wouldn't prevent quorum, and the person could be counted, but she'll be able to come and explain that a little bit more. But one of the things she did speak about was that in open meetings law, the legal document should be comprehensive enough. So our minutes are the legal document per OML that we have to refer to. Referring to the recording is great. It's an added benefit, but it's not a substitution. That summarization of what was discussed is our legal binding document. And then if people want additional information or flourish, they can go to listen to the discussion, but it really comes into summary of the context. So that's one of the things. So again, I'll be chiming in right at 3. Don't have a problem. You know, and again, I think we'll do a great job this month. The questions and commentary, one of the things that I've seen observed at other boards, they took a page from us, for example, CB12, they give 1 to 2 minutes for action items because they have to be read into the record. An obvious lift this month will be licenses and permits because they all have to be read in like what we just did. Then typically you will have questions and commentary. They would have 1 minute question, 1 minute response and they would cycle through the entire list before going back to that same person who had asked the first question. Again, one of the other items brought up is that if a member of a committee tries to rehash or represent an item that was already discussed at committee and failed to be included, again, the committee chair should inform the chair of the board so we're aware of this, so that way we can make a more efficient meeting. So those are some of the brief notes there. They're further down the page. If you could scroll down, Angel, please. Yeah. So again, the agenda preliminary readings, for example, we already kind of discussed about communicating in advance via email, and then finally, getting the agenda preliminary readings, which is very important for your minutes. Getting the minutes in allows everyone to review. I've had a lot of board members come back and say, hey, if you put it in the minutes, I'm going to read it all before I show up. Because again, as 50 members strong, we want to be respectful of the time. So that concludes it. Angel, yes.
Thanks. I wanted to say a few things in the spirit of this last conversation. So yes, as it relates to minutes, we're back to chasing committee chairs for minutes. The minutes that are being provided, folks are turning around minutes that say nothing. And we've said at this table a couple of times that the template that the staff is sending to the chairs to work on meets the OML guidelines. So we're in compliance. However, they're not helpful if you are trying to remember what the discussion was last year about a particular item. There's so little information that it's, you basically have nothing. You're left to go and look at sit through the entire recording to get something you should be able to get at a glance in the minutes. So I think that's in bad faith when we're getting that back from chairs, just to be frank. Give us something that we can use. And by us, I mean everyone that's reading it, right? You're the author, but everybody else is, at your mercy, right? Because it's what you're writing. So in terms of the times of the meetings, particularly the full board, we talk about this every single month, Xavier and I, every single month. Well, how was that meeting? How was that meeting? And I always say it was terrible. And I say it's terrible because the meeting goes on terribly too long. It, takes everyone's time. It doesn't need to be that long. And I think the last meeting, despite the fact that we had the clock on, it went on forever and ever because we were relitigating things that committees already spent a ton of time on. So I think the body has to, figure out, where it wants to value its time. Because in my opinion, it isn't really valuing time if it's spending 4 hours in numerous committee meetings only to spend 5 hours at full board relitigating work that committees already supposedly did. Like it's a waste of people's time. I think the full board, I think the committees have a responsibility to thoroughly vet and put forward recommendations that are clear. That's their job. And if they've done their job, I think the full board, unless there's something, particularly onerous in what's recommended by committee, needs to respect the work of that committee. And it shouldn't be a rubber stamp, but it also shouldn't be, we're starting this from scratch for every item at full board. I'm like, then, that begs the question, then what's the point of having the committee meetings? Especially if they're going on for 4 hours. And that's whether we're in person or whether we're, on a Zoom. I think the same consideration needs to be given irrespective of whether it's in person or remote. You guys discussed a little earlier on a motion that came out of the land use meeting. Thank you, Jessica, for working on the wording. That's not what was said. Something was mumbled at the land use committee, and it's not the only time that's happened. It's happened many, 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 many times. It's your responsibility. Everybody refers to Robert's rules and parliamentary procedure and all that, and then goes on to state a motion that says nothing. It's the committee's responsibility. You're all the ones with the voices, you're all the ones with the mics, to say clearly what the motion is. so that everyone that's voting, everyone that's witnessing it, everyone that's present, and the staff that's, tasked with typing it up understands what the motion is saying that is being voted on. This happens all the time. And that, the land use one is the most recent one. And then to get language that is, 5 sentences long when that's not what was said, is just, it's perplexing. This practice of pursuing contact information in a meeting, I think, well, I won't speak for you guys, but I find it it gives me pause. And what I mean is, there's a presentation by someone to the board, and then a member's asking for that individual's contact information to talk about something related to what's on the, and never reports back that information. Like, that's not the point of the meeting. The point of the meeting is for the benefit of the body, not for the benefit of the individual member. And if we're not hearing anything back, then some might question what the point of getting that contact information was. If it's for selfish reasons, I think it's something that the board should consider and think about, because it does give one pause. Then 2 last things. Xavier said earlier about, sending things to committee, that's where the work is done. I think that makes a lot of sense. However, we don't have on our committee agendas a space for that to happen. I think to avoid confusion and avoid frustration from the public that's being directed to committee and then not being allowed the time to say something, I think we should put on all the agendas, allocate time for that purpose, so that both the public knows when they can, share something, and the committee knows that it's supposed to be listening to stuff from the public. Because what we have is committee meetings that have strict agendas, and folks are like, that wasn't on the agenda, we don't have time, we have 18 other things. So I think we should standardize that. What was the last thing? Content. Oh yeah, service items. There are certain things being sent back to committee that the committees are not going to resolve. They're service issues. If there's service issues, they should be sent to staff. I would recommend that, unless it's a policy issue, that members of the public be directed to the office. We can either, help them directly if it's a service issue, or then point them towards a committee and get them on a presentation form and get them on an agenda. I think it can be frustrating to a member of the public that has a service issue to then wait for a committee meeting that could be, several weeks away, go to a committee meeting. It's not the job of the committee to resolve service issues. Then they can't resolve it, so then they get sent back to the staff so that we can try to help them. I think it's better to just send them to the office. And, of course, we're going to put stuff on agendas and forward it to committee chairs if it's a policy thing. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that'd be good to include within our committees an opportunity for the public. It's more organic when we're in person, because we would oftentimes in person refer back to members of the public if they had questions or concerns, or if they wanted to weigh in. In the digital space, it's not as obvious. So I think including that as part of their discussions would be helpful. So thank you for that recommendation very much. And to Angel's point, as I said earlier in the meeting efficiency notes, I will at the 3-minute mark, as chairs, kind of say, hey guys, 3 minutes, let's move along, refer to the minutes for the record, and keep us moving along swimmingly. So Jose, you had a question or comment?
For Angel, that was more than 3 minutes. That's all.
Don't get the timer, punk.
Keeping it light and fluffy, love it. All right, so but again, full board will be a lot more observant in business practice, and let's keep improving the process. I don't see any other hands for questions or comments. Thank you very much. And if there are no further comments with the old business, we will move along to our roll call, since we don't have any new business. Angel?
Can I make a very brief announcement? I neglected to mention this earlier.
Yes.
So just sharing with the body and whatever attendees we have left, on Saturday, May 7th, Xavier got the invitation earlier, at 1 o'clock on 111th Street and Park Avenue, there will be a street naming ceremony in honor of Carmen Maristani Ward. Ms. Maristani Ward was one of the founders of the East Harlem Block Schools. Public Safety Committee, you know, to their credit, supported this recommendation a couple of years ago. The event was actually supposed to happen a couple of weeks ago, but I made a mistake. Angel, made a mistake in writing the letter, and I wrote the wrong avenue. Thankfully, the council member and the city council were able to make the necessary changes so that the event can move forward, so that the ceremony unveiling was rescheduled from the prior date to the 27th. So if you are in the area and you do have the time, one, to celebrate something that we've been supportive of, but then also to celebrate a local hero, I would encourage you to attend. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Angel. Thank you very much. And I was very glad to see all of us pivot very quickly. I spoke to Carmen's daughter earlier this week, and she is just elated to have the community support. Carmen Ward Maristani was sister of Hyder Maristani. We had passed last support of both of these street renamings. So again, if you can be there, please. John, your hand was going up and down a bit. Did you have a question or announcement on that before we conclude? Yes, John, you have the floor.
Well, no, actually, the thing is that I was going to ask a question, but actually, it was answered in Angel's statement. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, John. Thank you. With that, since we don't have any new business, we will now have the roll call and adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for an efficient meeting, team.
Jose Altamirano.
Good night.
Stephanie Arroyo.
Here.
Jessica Elliott.
Present.
David Giordano.
Present.
John Green.
I'm out.
Xavier Santiago.
I'm present.
and Michelle Wilcher Clement. We have quorum.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Michelle, I'm going to give you a bell. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.